was like slow motion. I looked at him and I thought, I don't believe it, a doctor is going to hit me a box. They, to me, were probably the greatest ever Offaly team because they're the ones that broke the mould. Because it was such an obsession, I didn't care for anything in life, only what happened on that day. That's a fact. I didn't know it right there and then, but that was the end of my career. My name is Daithí Regan. These are my milestones with Sports Joe. Minor All-Ireland 1986. About 2 minutes to go. And we ended up getting a line ball at the end of that solo run. A big lump in my head. Rory O'Connor, I think, it struck me in the first half and he got sent off after 17 minutes. And we got a line ball resulting out of that, and it came in. There was 2 minutes to go, and I remember Michael Dignan jumped up with Pat Keneally. Both went to catch it, and it bounced on the ground into me hand, and a hand passed it over my shoulder into the back of the net. And we got 2 rapid points, and we won it by a goal. That was Offaly's first ever minor All-Ireland title. Yeah, we'd won the colleges All-Ireland that year in Birr, which was the first ever as well. So it was a historic day for Offaly. Really, really historic day. Cork were playing Galway in the senior All-Ireland. Afterwards, so all the Galway crowd were supporting us. So by the time the goal went in, the ground was packed and there was a great noise. But yeah, so many good memories from that. And that's 40 years ago, which is quite extraordinary that you can think back with such clarity, 40 years. But a good few of us went on then and won senior All-Irelands after, and we followed up that with another minor All-Ireland win the following year, and then 2 years later another minor All-Ireland, won 3 in 4 years, which was the catalyst for the Offaly team in the 90s. So yeah, it had a lot of connotations, that result, both on the day and for the future of Offaly hurling. But yeah, fantastic. Yeah, of course, losing Michael Hogan. Last November, actually, yeah, was captain. He captained that team, and he had captained us in the colleges All-Ireland earlier on that year. And like, again, a huge body blow, obviously, to his family, and for all of the lads that would have played with him. And us in Birr, we won Club All-Ireland with him as well. So tragically passed away so young, along with Brendan. That's a couple of those lads gone, and it's brings it all kind of back home here. I remember his speech that day and everything afterwards. Someone sent me a link after he died to the speech that he made afterwards, and we were great buddies. The Birr lads in particular, obviously we were very close as club mates and that kind of thing. So yeah, he was quietly spoken, but he captained all of our teams from schools all the way through, 12s, 14s. Very talented sportsman. By the time he'd retired, I mean, he'd won minor. He'd been involved in the under 21 in '89, which Tip Bettas, had won with Birr, Club All-Ireland title as well. So yeah, memories for his family and some to have and that kind of thing. But like just so many stories in life, like people going before their time. Colleges Senior A All-Ireland winners in 1986 beat North Mon in the final. We lost it in '85, and I think most of this team repeated to win a colleges All-Ireland because it was the holy grail for us, and we knew we had a good side. And I think 7 or 8 of this team went on to win our first ever minor All-Ireland title with Offaly. So this was like for brother Dennis, the principal of the school, Pádraig Horn, who managed the team, who was Offaly's captain in '81, who won the All-Ireland. This was a holy grail for the school. Birr had lost the finals in '79 and '80 to Flannans and North Mon. We had lost it in '85 to North Mon in a replay. For most of us on this team, it's the reason we repeated. It really was. We came together and said it wasn't for any academia or get extra points or anything like that. It was about trying to win. We beat Kieran's College by 15 points in the Leinster final, which showed where Offaly hurling had gravitated to, that you could beat the likes, Offaly teams could beat the likes of Kieran's by that much. I remember on the field after the game, word reached us that the great Offaly hurler Pat Carroll had actually died earlier on that day. So our celebrations were very muted in the dressing room afterwards. I remember brother Dennis led a decade of the Rosary, and the school disco was cancelled that night. It was absolutely huge because Pat Carroll was an icon, and Pádraig Horn obviously had been a colleague for years with him, and we knew what the likes of this meant to Pat Carroll and the progression of Offaly hurling. We knew what Pat Carroll meant to Offaly, and even at that age we knew what Pat Carroll meant to Offaly hurling. So literally within minutes on the pitch, everybody just jumping around the place, word got around that Pat Carroll had died, and that's my most vivid memory of that day, is the quietness and sadness in our dressing room after winning that game. Brilliant memories of this one. It's the finals. First 1989 Leinster final. I remember going off injured. So that was the year that Padjo Whelan took on Offaly minors, took on Offaly under 21s, took on Offaly seniors. Unprecedented. It's a great photograph because Paddy Delaney is there and Joachim Kelly and Aidan Fogarty. When they made the breakthrough in 1981, like we were 12 and 13, just a whole emotion around the county. I vividly remember it. And those guys, to us, were icons. They, to me, were probably the greatest ever Offaly team because they're the ones that broke the mould. They're the ones that won the first All-Ireland. People might say our team in the 90s was a more skillful team, but we were a good side. But I loved that team as a kid because they're the reason why you went home and you got a ball against the end of the wall and you wanted to pull out an Offaly jersey. You know, you have to have heroes, which is why I think the great counties who win successfully, it's easy for kids in those counties to gravitate to playing the game and wanting to be successful, and they have so many icons that they want to replicate. Like, for 80 years of the association, we didn't have that. So those bunch of young men, when they broke the mould in 1980 to win Leinster and then go on and win an All-Ireland in 81 and 85, I know personally they were my inspiration, and Pádraig Horan was my hero. As a hurling man, he still is to this day. An extraordinary man, and he managed us in Birr to win our first Club All-Ireland title. He managed us to win our college's All-Ireland title, and just an extraordinary man. So to have been involved with those guys, for me, that team to me, and playing with those players, you knew it when you played with them. Very humble men. All of those older Offaly guys were very, very humble. Humble men from humble backgrounds, but when they played for Offaly, they were giants. To us anyway, they were giants. So yeah, that's a lovely memory to have of that particular year, I have to say. 1994 All-Ireland semi-final against Galway. I remember that because I marked Michael Coleman, and I went to Michael Coleman's funeral in Galway 2 or 3 months ago. Myself and Michael Dignan went down to it. And it brings back a lot of memories because that's 94. In 1990, in the All-Ireland semi-final, we also played Galway. And I marked the late, great Tony Keady. I played against Galway in 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, 1994, and I marked 2 of the great, iconic Galway hurlers, Tony Keady and Michael Coleman, and both of them passed away. So the minute I look at that photograph, my first memory is Michael Coleman. I guess if Michael Coleman hadn't have passed away so recently, I'd have had a different view as to that day and the whole thing. But I remember leaving the hotel that morning, and one of our selectors, Podge Mulhere, said to me, "If you stop Michael Coleman, we'll beat Galway. He's the key guy." And I remember sitting in the stand, in the Hogan stand before that game. Limerick were playing Antrim in the other semi-final, and the Galway team were sitting down in front of us in the stand, and I kept looking at Michael Coleman, and he was smoking and smoking and smoking, and for me it was the bit of an edge you were looking for. Well, he's smoking, I'm not. And I remember that day just literally try not to let Michael Coleman get the ball in his hand, and when you see it, just move it on the deck, move it quickly and move it away from him. And I probably didn't hit the ball 4 times out of my hand that day. That's a rare photograph of me getting the ball that day in my hand. But I remember afterwards feeling shattered, but feeling I'd done a really good job because I had done my job, which was to stop one of their key talismen. And I'd like to think that my colleagues would have respected kind of what I brought to it, that, you know, Michael was probably more innocuous that day than he had been in many other games, which was, you know, me doing my job. The culmination of everything that you wanted from 12 years of age, and everything you did from 12 years of age up to that particular day, it was all geared towards this. And that's, you hear so many people say that have been lucky enough to be there. I mean, I knew from 12 years of age, my sole obsession in life was to win an All-Ireland medal, and other things in life suffered because of it. It really did, but I wouldn't change it for anything, because maybe I didn't have the maturity enough to realise that other things in life were as important, your education and further education and stuff I didn't do. Because it was such an obsession, I didn't care for anything in life, only what happened on that day. That's a fact, and I wouldn't change it for anything. It was a culmination of 14 years of obsessing over playing on that day in Croke Park with the national anthem. And I remember shoulder to shoulder with Johnny Pilkington when the national anthem was being played, and been very aware of what you were experiencing. And we were Offaly, so we experienced it relatively infrequently. So, you look at the Kilkennys, the Corks, the Tips and all of those great sides in hurling and football who did it year after year. But in context, looking at where we were coming from, our achievement was as magnificent, as seldom as it was, as theirs was, as regular as it was. But that photograph to me is 14 years of an absolute obsession. And thanks be to God, I along with my colleagues, got to experience it. Magical photograph. A magical day. Our first Club All-Ireland title, 1985, against Dunloy. And I think Gary O'Kane, my good and great buddy from Dunloy, who left me with the lovely facial features there sometime during the course of the first half. And I remember lying on the ground and Pádraig Corn, our manager, was out telling me there was nothing wrong and the doctor was bandaging me up, and Gary O'Kane was standing over me and he turned around to Pádraig Corn and said he wasn't meant to get up after that. Declan Pilkington lifting the cup, like great warrior. Joe.ie, great warrior for Birr, very close-knit. And like we were the parish, we're a town team, but we were extremely close. The memories I have with Birr are a lot of late nights, a lot of the week after and sometimes the fortnight after we were successful with our clubs, and the whole town just literally on an absolute high. We were very close, we were very driven, we were very united. When you win something like this with your club, you have to party because it's your whole town or parish that celebrates with you. So we were a very good side. We trained awful hard. We were incredibly united, and when we won, we partied like it was no tomorrow. That was my last ever championship appearance with Offaly. Yeah, we got to the All-Ireland semi-final against Cork and I didn't make it back onto the team after serving my suspension. And I was definitely towards the end. I was at the end of it with Offaly. It was 10 years after my debut and there was a lot of frustration, and I was never that quick, but I was a lot slower back then. And we were getting a bad beating and I felt very much sinned against until I saw the footage that night and realised I was lucky I didn't get jailed, to be fair about it. It happened in front of the Kilkenny dugout and I pulled across Andy Comerford and then I hit him a box, and it was like slow motion because it happened in front of the Kilkenny dugout, and I don't and can't remember the name of the Kilkenny doctor, but I vividly remember his face because for all the years he was there when we played against Kilkenny literally every year, and he looked a real gentleman. And I remember after I'd hit Andy Comerford, he jumped out of the dugout. He took a step over Andy Comerford and it was like slow motion. I looked at him and I thought, I don't believe it, a doctor is going to hit me a box, because he was really cross with me. But he dropped his bag and he dropped to his knee and he started to tend to Andy Comerford. I deserved what I got. Unfortunately, I got a lot of sendings off in my career. What I remember from that is that's the last time I was on the pitch in Croke Park with Offaly. I didn't know it right there and then, but that was the end of my career. I retired after that, and unfortunately I retired on a red card, which is like everything in life, you get on with it and you get over with it, and I got over it pretty quickly. I get a slagging to this day about it, guys. Andy Comerford, I wasn't able for Andy Comerford that day. He was a younger guy and he was a really, really good player, and I was frustrated, and I met Andy afterwards and we shook hands, as you should do. But yeah, we golfed the following day and we went drinking the following day, and I can't remember, somewhere in Laois. We watched it and they were replaying the Sunday game and everybody just thought it was hilarious, and they kept replaying it in the pub and they all thought it was hilarious at my expense, but not a way I would have chosen to go, and not something I'm proud of, but it's part and parcel of your career, and that's it. And it was one of those disappointing days, obviously losing and obviously getting a red card, because it was not something you want to be remembered for.